Namaskar and welcome to today's podcast, which has been organized under the theme of Swachhata Hi Seva, which is to celebrate the 10 impactful years of the Swachh Bharat mission. The mission was launched in 2014 by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, and it's a nationwide campaign which aims to eliminate open defecation and improve the solid waste management situation in our country. And it also represents one of the largest cleaning drives, and it fosters a sense of public awareness and action towards a cleaner and healthier environment. So we're honored to have with us two guests from Integrated Mountain Initiative and Zero Waste Himalaya. We have with us Roshan and Priya, who are going to be talking about their initiative of the Himalayan Cleanup. So we'd just like you to introduce yourselves.
Okay, namaste. I'm Roshan and I'm part of Zero Waste Himalaya and Integrated Mountain Initiative, logging in from Darjeeling. And Zero Waste Himalaya is a platform advocating for zero waste principles across the Indian Himalayan region. And Integrated Mountain Initiative is again a civil society platform really pushing for advocating for a mountain sensitive lens to development interventions. Thank you.
Hello,
Yes.
I'm Priya, and I'm also part of the Integrated Mountain Initiative, as well as I'm being a member of the Zero Waste Himalaya platform. The Zero Waste Himalaya is also a pan-Himalayan platform that has been working to advocate for sustainable waste management practices, as well as working at a policy level. And both IMI and Zero Waste Himalaya actually come together to work on the issue of waste in the Himalayan region.
Right.
Thank you.
If you could just tell us about what the project focus is, the Himalayan Cleanup. If you could just tell us about that and what is it that you do for it.
Sure. So the Himalayan cleanup is not just a cleanup. It started in 2018 when India was the global host for World Environment Day, and the theme was Beat Plastic Pollution. So we were really honored and really excited that the theme was Beat Plastic Pollution, because from Zero Waste Himalaya, we were trying to expand the narrative of what cleanliness is and what needs to be done. So the Himalayan cleanup was first initiated in 2018 across the Indian Himalayan region, anchored by Zero Waste Himalaya and the Integrated Mountain Initiative, which looked at cleaning up really important key sites that people and volunteers selected, and so it is definitely a very voluntary-led initiative, and that's where we are at, and maybe Priya can add more.
Yeah, also I think one of the things that we were really trying to focus on was how to kind of throw light on how the Himalaya were changing, especially from plastic waste, because there is this image that we have of the Himalayan mountains, that these are these places which are sacred and pristine, and but we who live in the mountains, we know that this is fast changing. So one of the things that we really wanted to throw light on through the Himalayan cleanup was, so when it was first conceptualized, it was to happen on a single day. We basically wanted volunteers to gather and then clean up these key sites, and then really see and reveal how much of waste and plastic waste actually are trashing the mountains. That on a single day, so many volunteers were able to clean up and generate so much of trash. So that's one big message that we also wanted to give when we first started it. But like Roshan mentioned, it was not just the cleanup. We were then also trying to see what was in the waste through a waste and a brand audit. Yeah, but then the main objective was to show that the face of the Himalaya is changing very rapidly. Yeah.
So you mentioned that the initiative involves volunteers. Could you perhaps tell us more about who are these people who are volunteering to participate in the drive?
Yeah, so it was very interesting that when we conceived this as a small group of people, we met here in Gangtok, and that's when we in fact also involved the Swachh Bharat mission here in Sikkim, and it was the SBM Sikkim here who gave a call to all the other counterparts of the other states and invited them here in Gangtok to have it was almost like the first meet of the mountains, specifically in the issue of waste. So then that's how, of course, not everyone could come, but there were civil societies from other states who participated. IMI representatives who came in from the other states, and then we gathered here in Gangtok for 2 days to plan out how we go about this. And so after that, we just gave an open call, to over social media, and so that's how the word so very quickly spread out. And it was just on the basis of an open call, a few social media posts that we rolled out, that there were just so many people and organizations and volunteers who responded to the call and said, yes, we want to be part of this initiative, because they'd also felt, what we were feeling about this issue of waste, that everywhere else in the mountains, people were actually feeling this problem. And that's why, they all responded. And there was not a lot of time also, but, within a span of 20-25 days, we had more than 250 organizations who actually responded to the call and decided that they're going to be part of the campaign. So that's how it rolled out for the first year. And then the second year, since we already had this network of participants, network of organizations, from then on, it was like just easy to kind of, carry it forward. I mean, not easy, of course, there's a lot of coordination involved. But then since we have this network of organizations, it's kind of just carried out on that strength. So yeah, Roshan, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I think so like Swachh Bharat kind of hosted Sikkim hosted the meeting, and we had good representation. But it also showed that the meeting showed that there is a need for a mountain lens, and everyone in the mountains felt that existing policies were not sufficient, and so the waste audit actually then informs and provides an evidence based like data set that allows ULBs, but now everyone to really fine tune their work. But it also added this new dimension of brand audits, calling on producers to be responsible for the waste that is, especially the waste, plastic waste that is generated or left or trashed in the mountains as such. And so the waste and brand audit results were actually presented at the MOFCC in the World Environment Day celebrations in Delhi on, I think, 1st of June, and so that's how this May thing happened, and it's continued onwards since then, the waste and brand audit. And over time, I think it has really highlighted the challenges and problems of the mountain states, recognized that there are contextual needs of the mountain states, and then then in 2018 the notion of extended producer responsibility wasn't there, but it has then that narrative shift has continued, and so we are actually really happy that EPR is there, and now we hope that EPR will be lagu in the mountains. Yep.
Right. Just building up on the question that was previously asked, that when you say volunteers, are we talking about the youth more predominantly? Are these the people who sign up for this particular role?
So I don't think it's just youth, right? If you've looked at it, definitely the youth, but a lot of schools, a lot of panchayats, a lot of traditional bodies, a lot of environmental NGOs, conscious people, but definitely voluntary, and wherever there has been the IMI state chapters, they've taken it forward. But I think this volunteer group have been strongly led by educational institutions, religious organizations, also faith-based organizations, and like NGOs as such. But I think Priya can add on more in the role of the Swachh Bharat, but I think what I wanted to say was it allowed people to really express their intention to really look at the issue of Himalayan waste and plastic waste in the mountains,
Right.
So the participation has been largely centered also around Sikkim and Darjeeling. We do get participants from across the mountain states, but the number of cleanups that happen in Sikkim and Darjeeling are by far, compared to the other states. And that is because we get the support of, especially in Sikkim, we get the support of the educational department, of the Swachh Bharat mission, who issue directives to all panchayats, to all schools, saying that they must, participate in the Himalayan cleanup and do the waste and brand audit, which then also helps them understand, some of the some of the systemic challenges that exist in the state. So like Roshan was mentioning, the participants in Sikkim and Darjeeling, of course, because a lot of educational institutes participate, have mostly been students, and then of course the local bodies, the panchayats, and like for instance, every gram panchayat is cleaning up in Sikkim, so that brings in a lot of the cleanup sites as well as the participants. Yeah.
And in the early days, I think in Darjeeling, the District Rural Development Cell also encouraged panchayats to take part of the cleanup, but all in the early days. And then sections of the Forest Department have also been integral to these cleanups. But cleanups with the humility that we can't clean up in one day. It is actually to inform and help people make individual changes.
I was coming to that. So these are annual drives that you do every year. Is that it?
Yeah, since
Yes.
2018, it has been an annual thing. During the COVID, we took a break, but what we did also, which really worked well during COVID, is we really looked at online peer educator workshops, and so people did home-based audits also. But it wasn't big during the pandemic. It wasn't big, but outside of the pandemic years, it's been growing every year, and so now I think we have refined it to the Himalayan cleanup. Like I said, humbly, we can't clean up the mess in a single day, but we can reflect on our waste footprint. The volunteers reflect on their waste footprint, and then once you clean up, get your hands dirty, then you really look at switching to sustainable lifestyles to reduce your footprint. And then once you have that privilege of reflecting and switching to sustainable choices, sustainable lifestyles, you demand better systems as well as better products and producer responsibility. So maybe Priya can add on to growing numbers also,
Every year, I mean, the first year definitely was, we had such great response. And then during COVID, of course, there was a lull and we had a tough time picking things up. But these last 2 years, again, there have been great participation. This year, we had around 15,000 volunteers from across the mountain states. But again, it was Sikkim, Darjeeling primarily who bring in the big numbers. Whereas and Ladakh this year was, of course, they were the third highest in terms of cleanup sites, as well as the number of volunteers that they were able to, gather. So this year it was about 15,000 volunteers that we got, and then about 350 organizations, institutes, schools, joining in to clean up around 450 sites across the mountain states. And while we have this theme of reflect, switch, and demand, more and more, now as we move towards the 6th year, it's more the demand part that we are now really trying to highlight. More than of course, the reflect and the individual choices, the switching to sustainable choices, options. There's a lot of talk around that already. There's so much that's going on, in those two areas. But in terms of demanding for producer responsibility, specifically for the mountains, because what we see is it's like a one-way movement, for plastic waste to just flow into the mountains. There's hardly anything that mechanism or the resources that mountain states have to take it back or do something with it. So waste managers are really, they are, how do you say? I mean, it's very difficult for them to manage what is coming in, the kind of plastic waste that's flowing into the mountains. So which is why, the part about demand is something that we are really trying to focus on, especially from this year onwards, so that all mountain states come together to raise their voices that, producer responsibility in the mountains needs to be looked at from mountain lens, as well as, have larger implementation.
Yeah, I think recognizing the fragile nature, yet the essential nature of these ecosystems that exist in the Himalayan range. NIUA also anchors the Parvat Manthan initiative, which is focused on cleaning up the Indian Himalayan region states, making it more sustainable. I do feel like there is the introduction of Swachh Bharat mission might carry a ripple effect across the states with respect to solid waste management, particularly also with the work that Zero Waste Himalaya and IMI are doing. However, I would like to understand from you the work that both the organizations are doing. How do you think it aligns with the Swachh Bharat mission objectives?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the time that we started in 2018 to now, today in 2024, there are just so many changes that have happened also on the ground, in terms of SBM 2.0, because now there are clear guidelines as to how they need to manage the plastic waste also in the rural areas, which was definitely not there when we started out. So there are very clear guidelines that are there, as part of SBM, and we see that these are being put into place. It's just that some of the things are just so problematic that specifically, when it comes to problematic plastics, like your multi-layered plastics, for the mountains, there are just no solutions, to these plastics. So while SBM 2.0 have very clear guidelines as to, what needs to be done with plastic waste, there are, still challenges that are beyond the guidelines and which will really need to be looked at. But definitely looking at, from where we were in 2018, that there was hardly any discussion on how plastic waste has to be managed in the mountain areas, in rural areas. We've come a long way, because we see it, that the panchayats are very clear as to what they're supposed to be doing, how they're supposed to be managing, what sort of waste. There are very clear guidelines on that, but then there are larger systemic production levels issues, which really also kind of, plague. There are these challenges which still need to be overcome for the mountains as such. So, and like I mentioned, I think the Himalayan cleanup also throws light on that, because one of the challenges that every volunteer or every organization who's cleaning up faces is, what do we do now that we've collected all this trash? Where do we take it? And
Right.
they constantly bombard us with this question as to what do we do with it, because the findings of the Himalayan cleanup is that more than 90% is always plastic of what we pick up, but a large percentage is non-recyclable plastic, so it means, the recyclable we can still send, we can still link it with the recyclers, whoever there are. But then if such a large volume of the plastic waste that we're collecting is non-recyclable, there's a serious challenge there, right? What are they going to do with that? So wherever there are these plastic waste management units set up, segregation sheds that have been set up, we try and link it with them. Not that, once they go to these PWMUs, not that they're going to kind of, that's also going to resolve it, but at least they can park it for some time, but wherever these are non-existent, there are in the end, there's no option but for these plastics to end up in the being dumped in the landfill. But then that also throws light on how serious the challenge is, so specifically of non-recyclable plastic waste in the mountains. So that's been some of the insights that we've had coming out of the THC. Roshan, I'm sure you might want to add to this.
Yeah, I guess exactly right. So I think there is the demand which is systemic in nature, that we shouldn't have these problematic plastic, like the unnecessary non-recyclable plastic. But even in the midstream, the Swachh Bharat 2.0 is really great in terms of collection. But what do we do beyond it? But what is also interesting and important from the Himalayan cleanup is consistently 70% of the plastic waste tends to be non-recyclable. But what is very frightening is that within the Himalayan system, that even recyclable plastic like PET seems to be found everywhere. So there are inherent problems of collection and linkages that the geography gives, that hasn't been resolved as such. So it's great that the Swachh Bharat 2.0 is doing recognizing rural and setting up collection centers. But for example, someone in Nagaland, someone in Arunachal, Ladakh, what do we do even with the recyclable plastics as such, right? Non-recyclable has its own issues. So I think that's something. And I think the other thing the Himalayan cleanup also informs is that even with the single-use plastic that are banned, some of them are still available in the mountains. Like, it's between 2 to 3% of the total waste collected, but it also is consistent to the national data as to what it is, right? So yeah, we do have issues of linkage and challenges. So in that sense, we are definitely have improved with the collection, but what do we do after that? And unless and until we don't have, we preempt that issue, no amount of cleaning up legacy waste is going to resolve the problem if we continuously filling up our landfills, and the Himalayan cleanup is an indicator of the bigger problem as such. So we are thrilled that collections are being talked about, but there are inherent geographical as well as material problems that are there, so that's where we are.
Well, I think recognizing these aspects are, I think it's quintessential towards identifying that we're probably progressing in the right direction. I think the work that Zero Waste Himalaya and Integrated Mountain Initiative is doing with respect to bringing educational institutions, religious institutions, NGOs, and bringing them on board to volunteer towards the cleanup of our ecosystems, our own Himalayas, is one aspect of it. And with the support of campaigns or missions with respect to Swachh Bharat mission, it brings in another force from the other side, which can promote behavioral change, for instance. So it's both the infra and the behavioral streams that come together to make an impact. And in that regard, while Swachh Bharat mission has recently been introduced into Sikkim, for instance, there are positive steps, like we just learned, that they're taking positive strides towards developing better solid waste management systems, and also spreading awareness towards solid waste segregation and collection. And hopefully, like we have phases in which missions are released, they also link it to more improved treatment and disposal as well. Yes. So on behalf of National Institute of Urban Affairs, I'd like to sincerely thank Roshan and Priya for joining us for this podcast episode. We wish you and we wish your organization all the best to take things forward. And with that, we'd like to also just convey to our audience that Swachh Bharat mission is completing 10 years on the 2nd of October. And hopefully, we all learn through the experiences or the incremental changes that this mission has brought to each of our lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you.